Today we're going to show you how to remove an axle off any of the ROVs and ATVs that have a white knuckle or a white band. And in later years now, they're going to be gray. We'll start our axle removal procedure by removing the rear wheel. This would be the same as if you were doing it on a front axle as well. Now going to remove the cotter pin, locking the rear nut, axle hub nut. Now we're going to remove the nut holding the hub on. I'm going to remove the brake caliper. Take the caliper off and just let it hang there. I can remove my hub. Now if I remove this nut and cap screw, I can tip this out away from my axle. To keep this up out of my way, I'm going to take a strap and put it up through here just to hold it up. Now I can tip my axle down out of the way, hub I mean, and then making sure the axle is straight, parallel to the transaxle or to the knuckle. And I'm going to push in on it. As you see this movement, push it in, it stops, and you're going to feel it move in just a little bit. And by holding them together, I can remove the axle.
If you run into a circumstance where you cannot remove the axle by proper means, we have modified this tool here, the axle removal tool, to get it in behind the axle and then use the slide hammer action to aid in removal. As seen in the picture here, we have ground off the edge of the tool so this can wedge in behind the inner joint to allow the slide hammer to grab the inner joint. We have just taken a 4-inch grinder, ground down the tips just to allow us access behind the inner joint. So the reasons we see these axles get stuck into transaxles or on the larger Wildcat gear cases is this O-ring right here can fail. If dirt, debris, water get past this O-ring, it'll rust the splines and then also cause the C-clip to seize in here, not allowing it to disengage for proper removal. So when you do take this apart, inspect the O-ring, replace if necessary. So for this process, we'll put the special tool in, position it just behind the inner joint, and this will take 2 people, one to run the slide hammer and one to use a pry tool up through the skid plate, pressing onto the tool to get it pressed into behind the axle. With this motion, you'll push the axle in to release the clip with pressure on your pry bar, and then the second person slide in.
For axle installation, we're going to compress the axle, and then once we feel it bottom out, we're going to push it just a little bit more, and then bring it up and slide it into position. Now that we have the axle installed, I want to take and pull on it to make sure that it's not going to pop back out of the gear case or the transaxle or differential, whichever I'm installing the axle to. So just give it a few tugs. I now know that it's installed correctly. The clip has been expanded inside the gear case or differential. I'll install the axle into our knuckle. Drop my strap off, holding my arm up out of the way. Bring that down into place. Reinstall the cap screw and nut. Be sure to torque this to the proper specification. Now install my hub and my brake caliper. You should use new bolts with patch lock. Be sure to tighten those to the proper torque specification. Install our axle nut. Using the proper holding tool, put on and torque that to the proper specification, and then reinstall your cotter pin. Bend that over into position to make sure it stays locked, and then reinstall your wheel and tire. And be sure to torque these to proper specification as well.